Imagine an ocean of grass. Not just a big field, not even a huge pasture, not even your entire state, but a quarter of the continent of North America, covered in nothing but grass. That's the way it used to be here, from Saskatchewan clear down to Texas. It was the Great Plains of North America.
And those Great Plains are still out there if you know where to look. So is the native game that has always made this a hunter's paradise. Join us as Ron Spomer returns to the land of his birth, South Dakota, in search of mule deer, whitetails, and bison.
If you find the right rancher who's got a big spread of property like this, why, you can walk for miles and miles right to the horizon. Let's give it a try. I'm Ron Spomer, and this is Winchester Legend.
Winchester Legends is brought to you by Winchester Ammunition, the American legend. Swarovski Optic. She Safari, clothing for her expedition. Otis Technologies, the most advanced gun care system in the world. Walker's Game Ear, hear like you've never heard before, and protect yourself from the harmful effects of muzzle blast.
Sunrise in central South Dakota is as quiet today as it was 200 years ago. The grassland hills slowly erode toward the Missouri River. This is where third-generation rancher Lyle Anderson guides hunters over the tens of thousands of acres surrounding his AA ranch, located near the isolated village of Whitehorse.
Welcome to the 101st meridian. That's a line of longitude running from the North Pole to the South Pole, right down the center of the Plain States, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. To naturalists, the 101st meridian represents the meeting of east and west naturally. Species from the east begin to peter out, species from the west are right up against them. So it's sort of a meeting of two worlds. To the deer hunter, it represents a unique opportunity to hunt both the white-tailed deer and the mule deer in the same habitats. It's a great, fun opportunity. It's whitetail hunting in the open, yet it's mule deer hunting where sometimes it's fairly wooded and brushy. We've got extreme winds today, which is not unusual for the plains, and we're finding the mule deer down in the creeks in typical whitetail cover. So we're going to work our way up through this woodland, seeing if we can't find these mule deer before they find us. And if a big whitetail happens to jump up, that's just fine. They were made when it was muddy, probably 2 days ago after that snow and everything melted. Now it's drying out. Those things will be pressed into that hard dirt now for weeks before they erode. Down in the creek bottom again. Like those bottoms.
There's plenty of deer around, but Ron just can't seem to get close enough. On each stalking approach, the deer spook and quickly run off beyond safe gunshot range.
get into this little creek and there's not even much cover, but when you realize how they can get down in the creek bed itself and lay flat in this snowberry brush and shrubbery that's probably no more than 2 feet tall, you look up and down these creeks and you've got a windy channel, just twists and winds for miles and miles and joins up all sorts of other little narrow draws and pockets. And that's where they hide. You wouldn't think it's possible. You've got to cover a lot of country. There's not a high density of deer out here. But because it's so huge and so open, some of the bigger bucks are able to escape hunting pressure and hide out in little corners like this.
The reason a mule deer supposedly pogo like that when they jump, they call it starting. And it's a defense tactic to get them elevated above the brush to see the predators. And the reason they stop like that one did on the side hill, or these did on the side hill, is to assess the situation before they take off running. A whitetail will just haul downhill, over hill into the brush and just keep going flat out. A mule deer is more cautious about where he escapes. And that starting action enables him to land on one point with all four legs from which he can jump in any direction instantly. So if he suddenly finds himself running right toward a wolf or a coyote, he can shift to the left or the right instantly every time he hits the ground.
A turkey diaphragm call serves double duty, sometimes attracting coyotes, and sometimes flushing deer from hidden draws. And there goes one now.
Got 4 points already.
Spomer tries to stop the buck in order to assess its age and size, but the youngster hasn't fallen for the barks and whistles that often prompt mule deer to pause. When it finally does, our hunter judges it too immature. It'll be bigger next year.
I thought he was a forkhorn until he turned broadside and I saw those four. That's probably the one he meant that we were supposed to take, but little deer like that isn't a real deer, but it just seems kind of silly to shoot them before their time. It's like drinking a wine right after you put it in the bottle.
Failing to find a mature buck is always a disappointment, but that's hunting. The challenge and the adventure are in the search, and this hunter's search is about to uncover bigger game, exponentially bigger. When we return, Spomer comes eye to eye with North America's largest horned animal, the icon of the American West, the bison.
Oh, he's huge. What a monster beast. Holy mackerel, he sticks through there. He's as high as a moose through that.
Winchester Legends is brought to you by She Safari, clothing for her expedition. Night and Hail Game Calls, bring them closer. Winchester Rifles and Shotguns, the guns that work. Walker's Game Ear, hear like you've never heard before, and protect yourself from the harmful effects of muzzle blast.
Buffalo, meat on the hoof. Endless herds streamed by for days in a seemingly endless land. The excesses of nature brought out the excesses in man. Here was a resource free for the taking, and we took it with a vengeance. Uncontrolled market hunting inevitably brought bison to the brink of extinction. But a few forward-thinking conservationists, exemplified by men like Teddy Roosevelt and rancher Scotty Phillips of South Dakota, saved the animals from completely disappearing.
The bison has always had a certain mystique about it. Certainly that's because of its size, and it's got to have been because of its incredible teeming numbers, but I think it's also, to this day, because of the country it roams. It's just big, wide open sky country, you know, the big sky country, that sort of thing. It just has a special knack or appeal to Americans because we're the free, independent people who are always moving west, and that idea of being able to move freely through the country and live off the land on herds of bison. You know, it's no wonder the Plains Indians had such a revered cultural system, living the way they did as free nomads. It's just appealing, the whole idea of it. And it's just a treat to be out in big country like this and able to cover hills. There goes an eagle right now. I've seen golden eagles, bald eagles, prairie dog towns. You know, it's all still here up in South Dakota on the high plains. It's just a special treat to be able to roam this country.
A lot of people, when they come out buffalo hunting, you know, they've heard about it and all the stories. They may have a new reproduction that they bought, and they want to go out and shoot them like they did 150 years ago.
You know, when you hunt bison, you figure it's sort of this bygone mystique of the old Western days and sort of things like that. So it's kind of cool to use an old rifle. And I got to use what is essentially a replica. Browning still makes the 1885 single-shot high-wall rifle. John Browning invented this single-shot rifle, which became one of the biggest sellers ever for Winchester.
Big denuded prairie dog town out here. You know, prairie dogs were an integral part of the high plains environment. Kept the grasses short. Bison and prairie dogs went together like ham and eggs. And South Dakota still has both of them. Big prairie dog towns and still some herds of bison. And the dogs, by chewing off the grass and other vegetation, keeping it short, it's always sprouting up fresh so it stays green, has a lot of vitamin content in it. But boy, you get too many of them, they sure seem like they can denude a landscape. I mean, it's just like a moonscape out there. The weather is particularly lovely today. It's classic plains. Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Alberta, Saskatchewan. Wide open plains, as they say, nothing but 3 strands of barbed wire to stop the Arctic wind.
Wind or no wind, the hunter meets nature and his quarry on their terms. Just as bison, prairie dogs, and native peoples learn to live and forage in gales, so must today's hunter. This is what high plains hunting was, is, and always will be. Big sky, big land, big breezes, and big, big game. It all adds up to big adventure.
Ooh, man, it's getting windy again. Gonna have to watch the wind drift on this shot. We get it.
And I was really humping. I was covering ground, trying to find something to work for. When I finally found this bull, I thought, piece of cake. You know, you walk up and shoot him like a cow in a pasture. Au contraire. Up the other side, I looked for his tracks, and there were a lot of tracks out there, and I really couldn't tell anything fresh from old, and thought, well, it's best just to go over the hill where I last saw him and look again. Because, you know, you've got a big black animal out there on that bleached out grass. You ought to be able to find him. So I just kept on a dog in the direction that he'd gone, went over the top of the hill and started glancing again and into some side draws, and then you begin to wonder, you know, is he crafty enough that he went down a side draw and turned around a corner and cut back on you, or did he just keep going? You know, what do you do? So I went high again, figured my best bet is to get up, get some elevation, and look down into these little pockets. And that worked because I found him in a little side draw, working his way up and feeding.
We'll see if Ron and the old 4570 can beat the wind when we return to Winchester Legends.
Winchester Legends is brought to you by Winchester Ammunition, the American legend. Swarovski Optic. Night and Hail Game Calls. Bring them closer. Otis Technologies, the most advanced gun care system in the world. Winchester Rifles and Shotguns, the guns that work.
Look at how far cartridge technology has come in 127 years. In 1873, this 4570 government cartridge was hot. In 2001, Winchester came out with a 300 WSM. The 4570 pushes a 300 grain bullet from the muzzle at 1,880 feet per second. This little guy, only half that size, is moving on at 3,250 feet per second. But look what happens at distance. At 300 yards, that bullet has dropped to 42 inches. While the little 150 grain is still flying along at 2,285 feet per second, and it only drops 9 inches. The big difference is the form of the bullet. That blunt nose and a fairly short, heavy bullet means it's shoving air out of its way, losing energy and falling. You get more punch at long range and a flatter trajectory with our new streamlined bullets.
Well, like where we're hunting buffalo, we try to keep them in at least 10,000 acres, and everybody thinks, well, you'll just walk up to them. Everybody wants to get within 100 yards. Well, today we've chased and chased and chased one, and it takes a lot. You know, their walk is like a human's run, so it's not near as easy as it looks.
Well, I was still kind of out there at the fringe of 4570 range, which is about 150 yards. You know, if you're really good and you know that cartridge well with a tang sight and a peep, you can slide things up and take some pretty long shots. But I felt I was comfortable at about 150, maybe 175 range, no more than that.
Just in case, I better put another round in. Better to be safe than sorry. All right, Mr. Buffalo. I think your steaks and hamburger by now. There he is. Yeah, I don't think there's anything left in him to worry about. He's been lying there for quite a while. Whoa, look at that. Size of this brute. Oh my goodness. Whoo! Perfect lung shot right over the top of the heart, a little bit high, but a good lung shot. What a massive beast. Look at the shaggy hair on that foreleg. And look at this. Oh man, look at the wool on that head. Those things are designed for grazing. They use that tough woolly fur right there to push through the snow. I've watched them in Yellowstone when they're feeding. It's remarkably efficient. The beard even contributes. They'll use that beard to brush away snow, to get to the grass underneath. It's really quite amazing. But look at the mass on that horn. Designed purely for fighting, those horns. They'll hook each other and the fur flies. But the wool on that is just dense. No wonder they're pretty much oblivious to coal.
So it was pretty big country, and I was tickled to be able to hunt in there all by myself. Just wandering the country and covering ground the way I like to do it, you know, working hard and looking for that bison.
With ranches like Lyle Anderson providing the native grasses and vast pastures on which deer and bison thrive, there will be plenty of opportunities for hunters to wander for the same splendid game our forefathers found here 200 years ago. AA Ranch Outfitters remains just the place to create tomorrow's hunting legends.
For more information about Winchester ammunition, log on to winchester.com.